Hello, my name is Orla. Welcome back to my channel. In this channel I read short stories for children and adults who are interested in them. In this video I'll be reading another story from Girls Who Slay Monsters by Ellen Ryan, illustrated by Shona Shirley MacDonald. And these are daring tales of Ireland's forgotten goddesses. So get cozy, cuddle down, and we will begin. In this video, I'll be reading the story of Nemain. That's her there. She likes to scream. Right. Nemain was a serious goddess with intelligent eyes and neat primrose yellow hair. Her story began in the wild woodlands of the Outer Worlds, land of Ross, where the gods were often violent and regularly caused trouble for their mortal worshippers. Her home life was chaotic too. Nemain lived in a fortress with her war goddess half-sisters Morrigan, Macha and Baivkata, who all had a destructive dark side. They saw Nemain as a bit of a goody two-shoes who didn't fit in with everyone else. While they liked to fight, she was quiet, thoughtful and loved to read. But she had to hide how clever she was. If Nemain beat her sisters at games or puzzles, they could get angry. So the goddess often pretended to lose in case she woke up with no hair or found her feet covered in fish guts. Seeking support from her mother didn't help. She would just laugh and say, "Goddesses will be goddesses." Secretly, Nemain wasn't as much of a goody two-shoes as her family thought. Just like her sisters, she knew darkness stirred inside her. But she pushed it down, keen to be good and bring order to the world. At a young age, she travelled across the outer world, visiting everywhere from the sweet-scented Isle of Apples to the pleasant plain, to campaign for a kinder society. She encouraged her fellow gods to turn away from violence. "Though we are immortal, isn't it time we grew up?" she asked them. "Our worshippers need guardians and teachers, not troublemakers." Elder gods scoffed at Nemain. "Go home and bake bilberry pies," they said, "or play chasing with other young gods." To them, she was an irritating little girl just looking for attention and too young to understand how the world worked. Nemain realised her cause was hopeless and gave up speaking out about her beliefs. Feeling defeated, she went back to the land of Ross. As they grew older, the goddess's sisters left for adventures across Ireland, but often returned to tell stories of their travels. These were dreadful, blood-soaked tales, from beheading soldiers to raising baby monsters. Nemain was horrified by her siblings' actions, but they weren't the only ones behaving like this. Other deities from the land of Ross were also wreaking havoc. Goddess Creevderg often attacked mortals with her red claw. And the sea god's new wife, Eve, transformed her stepchildren into swans. Nemain was furious with her fellow gods, but contained her rage. "I have to protect mortals," she thought, "but I must do it without adding to the violence." She felt the only way to solve the problem was to create a code of conduct. So Nemain carefully created a system of laws for how gods should behave in both the outer world and the mortal lands. She worked hard to make sure the laws were firm but fair, designing them so that both gods and mortals would be protected. Gods could punish worshippers if they were disrespectful, but any god who killed a mortal must be imprisoned. When her laws were ready, Nemain presented them to Dagda, the king of the gods, and requested that he bring them into force. Dagda didn't treat her like a cheeky child the way other gods did. Instead, he was impressed by her passion and agreed to her rules. The goddess was delighted and confident that real change was finally coming. But every day Nemain continued to hear new stories of bloodshed caused by the gods. In just 1 week, a goddess unleashed monsters across Ireland, and another started a war in Scotland just for fun. The gods believed they were above my laws, she realised. Well, they'll soon think differently if I enforce them. So she said goodbye to her homeland once more and moved to the silver-clouded plain, an empty, misty island that floated above Ireland. It was drizzly, wet and wind-beaten up there, but now she could keep an eye on mortals and gods alike and report any wrongdoings to Dagda. It didn't take long before Nemain spotted the goddess Maeve. She was in County Longford, driving a massive army up north towards battle just to steal a magical bull. Many mortals would die because of her greed. How dare Maeve ignore the rules like this, Nemain said, disgusted at such dreadful actions. She was tired of gods ignoring her laws and weary of keeping her anger contained. If she didn't let it loose, it would burst from her chest and tear her in two. The rage inside her surged up like an unstoppable wave, and she screeched out, "Stop what you're doing, Maeve! You and your army are nothing but madmen." She's getting angry. Her scream echoed down across the land, from the highest mountain peaks to the deepest hollows of earth. The sound of her voice was at once high-pitched, like nails scratching stone, haunting like a winter wind through an old oak forest, and choking like the final rasps of death. The horrible cry seeped into mortals' ears like a venomous poison, spreading madness into their minds. Maeve's soldiers grew delusional and suffered from terrifying visions. They screamed in terror and scratched at their heads, and one by one threw themselves onto their spears until 100 men had died. Nemain herself became lost in her own scream and unravelled into a state of pure frenzy. Her eyes turned wild, and her pretty neat hair grew long and tangled. All her life she knew she would develop a superpower and feared it could be sinister. She had never wanted to be like her sisters and worked hard to smother that side of herself. But her goddess power wasn't meant to be contained. And to Nemain's surprise, now that it was released, she felt free and exhilarated. Word quickly spread that good girl Nemain had gone bad, brutally punishing Maeve's army with a super scream that magnified the havoc of war. Normally, gods were not afraid of each other's powers. They were immortal after all. But no one wanted to spend an eternity trapped in madness, so they didn't want to get on the wrong side of Nemain. The gods made sure to obey her laws from then on. For most of the time, at least, they behaved well. Nemain had succeeded in restoring order to the land, but 100 men suffered and died in the process, and the Irish people never forgot her brutality towards Maeve's army. For centuries afterwards, according to ancient texts, they cursed their enemies by saying, "Nemain be upon you." The end. Ooh, the story of Nemain from Girls Who Slay Monsters. Until the next one. Bye bye.